we will get started here. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled you could be with us today for our webinar on recruiting in the Middle East, insights and opportunities. My name is Ellie Butler, and I'm head of marketing for North America at IDP Connect, and I am thrilled to be your host for today's session. We have a broad range of institutions from across the US joining us, and I know you will find immense value in the insights that our experts will be sharing on the Middle East. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the duration of the webinar using the Q&A tool that's located at the bottom of your webinar window, and we'll cover those in a Q&A segment at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording and the slides will be shared with you all in a follow-up email. And moving right along, I am so pleased to introduce you to our expert speakers for today's session, combining knowledge from our IDP on-the-ground network with insights of our institutional partners. So if you could each introduce yourselves, I will pass to you, Amith.
Thank you, Ellie. Welcome to the session to everybody. My name is Amith Kumar. I'm the Regional Senior Destination Manager for US and Canada, and I'm based in our regional office in Dubai and look after Middle East and Africa. Over to you, Victor.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Victor Finch. I'm Director of International Admissions at the University of Toledo.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. Thank you, Amith, for joining us late in your evening. We are very grateful. And jumping ahead, we'll take a quick look at our agenda for today's session. So we'll start with a brief introduction to IDP. We'll give an overview of Middle Eastern enrollment trends nationally for the US and through IDP. Amith will share a deep dive on insights from the Middle East, focusing on a few key countries for your recruitment. And finally, Vic will discuss the University of Toledo's strategy in the Middle East and why this is such an important market for their recruitment. All right, so I will just quickly touch on who we are at IDP for those of you who may not know us. IDP is the global leader in international education with a focus on building trusted human relationships with students, with institutions, and with the sector. We do this on a global scale. We place over 50,000 students a year around the world, and it is through our investment and our innovative use of data and digital technology that we have been able to scale and enhance our personal connections. This enables us to deliver global success to more students and institutional partners than ever before. And just as we guide students with expert advice and help them to find the right institution, we also work strategically with institutions to tailor an approach that meets your international student recruitment objectives. So whether that's providing you with data and insights to aid in your strategic planning, delivering student volumes that meet your enrollment objectives, diversifying across student cohorts, so whether you're interested in geographical diversity or subject diversity, and providing efficiency and quality for you throughout the funnel from student inquiry down through to admissions and enrollment. We provide our institutional partners with all of these solutions. We have a physical network of student-facing offices in over 30 countries, pictured here in the dark orange, and we send students to the major English-speaking destination countries that are pictured here in the yellow. We have over 1,500 counselors throughout this network, so we are truly embedded within the markets in which we operate, and students really trust the IDP name. I know that Vic does a great job of visiting these offices throughout the world, so I'm sure he'll be touching on that a bit in his segment. Alongside our physical network, we also have the largest digital presence of any international student service provider across our websites and our mobile app. So we operate 33 student-facing websites across Hot Courses and IDP.com. This map here highlights the Hot Courses sites across the globe, and we have the IDP sites listed across the right there. And these sites are all locally hosted, so you can see the .br for Brazil, the .vn for Vietnam, and we receive over 100 million visits annually to these websites from prospective students. And then to provide some additional context for today's conversation, specifically on the Middle East, I just want to briefly touch on enrollment trends to the US from the Middle East. So this data comes from Open Doors and from the Education USA Global Guide. And we can see that there were over 46,000 students from the Middle East studying in the US during the 2021-22 academic year, and a 9.7% decline from the previous year. So this is partly due to economic pressures, currency devaluation, the rise in locally available academic options for these students, and some changes to government scholarship programs as well. Over on the right here, we can see the top 10 sending countries to the US from the MENA region, with Saudi, Iran, and Kuwait at the top of that list. Now, if we look specifically at IDP data from the Middle East, we've actually seen consistent increases in both applications and enrollments over the past 3 years. So a very positive picture here. More and more Middle Eastern students are coming to IDP to start their study abroad journey. And the top sending countries to the US from this region through IDP include the list here that we have on the left. So the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, and Oman. And to dive a bit further into these regional insights, I am pleased to pass it over to Amith Kumar, Senior Destination Manager at IDP.
Thank you very much, Ellie, for sharing those insights and, to start off this section. So moving on to my section and just giving you a bit of perspective into our region, I just wanted to showcase what our region consists of. So we have 21 offices currently, and we have a mix of IDP owned and licensed offices. So those that are in orange are our IDP owned, and those that are in green are licensee. We do have a licensing model here because there are some countries where we cannot we cannot have our own establishment, so we have a local partner, or there are markets where they're not big enough for us to go all in, right? Obviously, you would have heard in the news that we recently acquired Intake. So, the Africa part will have more offices once that integration happens. But with today's conversation or session, we'll be focusing more on the Middle East part of it. So moving on to the visa grants, I thought it would be important to, just highlight a visa grant. And in a sense, that gives us an idea of the market size for certain key markets. So for IDP per se, our key markets are, or priority markets are UAE, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. UAE, the reason UAE is there is because it's one of our oldest and most resourced offices, and that's where most of our students come from the Middle East for IDP. Then Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are historically very big or large markets for EUS. So that's one place that, or those are those two source markets that we really are looking to grow in. And then obviously we have emerging markets that we do have a focus on, which is Egypt, Oman, and Kuwait. Now, Egypt and Kuwait, you'll also see that they have improved in FY22 in terms of their visa grants and market size in essence. And with Kuwait, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, you do see sponsored students, which I'll be sharing a bit more in the later slides. Just a disclaimer on UAE and Oman, the market size or the visa grants are based. There is a bit of assumption that's taken because we don't really get the actual data from the immigration. Because they only look at visa grants based on citizenship and not. So now with this particular slide, what I wanted to highlight is just to show where most of the IDP students go from this region. So you can see the top 3 destinations are UK, Canada, and Australia. US was growing in FY18, but started taking a dip in the next few years, especially around FY19. The Middle Eastern countries did see a drop, but it's slowly improving in FY22. And this is what we want to grow, because US as a market is strong in certain countries. So we want to work with you in trying to develop this as well in few markets. So now moving on to the next, just giving you some insights on what's currently happening in terms of visa processing. At the moment, the appointment waiting period is on average around 90 days, but I've also received feedback from the offices that as they constantly check, both our counselors and students keep checking, and sometimes they're lucky and they can get an appointment that's only 15 days away. Now, at the moment, the visa success rate for our offices are around 78 to 80%, and the top countries, that's an average across the Middle East and Africa region. But the top countries are UAE, Oman, Egypt, and Kuwait, which essentially tends to have more than 80% in terms of success rate as well. So now just giving you a quick insight into the audience persona, I won't go into all different categories, but what I want to highlight is the two types of or students you might see, which is the self-funded and sponsored students. So certain markets, for example, Egypt or UAE, you would see a huge number of self-funded, or you see mostly self-funded students, because in UAE you've got a lot more expats, but generally in Egypt they don't have a lot of sponsorship going on. So you have students who are paying out of their pockets, or their parents are supporting them. In this case, students do look at scholarships and affordability as well, in addition to other factors. Sponsored students are those obviously who are supported by the different ministries, and mainly from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, and obviously a small number that comes from UAE as well. And with the students, while historically there hasn't been a lot of restrictions on where they go in terms of budget and living expenses, at the moment the ministries also look at that. They do compare institutions also on those bases as well. So now moving on to certain demand drivers. So with this particular slide, what we did was we did a bit of internal survey with some of our students, and what we figured is we wanted to see how students think versus how parents think, right? So with students, the factors or the drivers that make them select any particular destination or institution is, it starts off with cost. Then they look at study area. Then they talk about the post-study work opportunities or opportunities after studying. They then look at university rankings and scholarships. Now, if we go on to parents, then what you'll see is cost is a common factor for both students and parents. But with parents, then for them, the second factor is university ranking, scholarship, study area, and then finally the post-study work opportunities that they look at. Again, this is we have done it internally, so it may not stand true for all students, but it sort of gives you an understanding of how some of the students and parents think in this region. So going over to certain popular courses. So I put this popular courses based on what we are seeing currently. So you see a lot of students aspiring to go for health sciences, engineering, science, and business. And some of the upcoming areas is really picking up. And one of the drivers for this is UAE and Saudi Arabian government. So because they are looking at a lot of developments around the computer science, information technology area. So AI, data science, machine learning, cybersecurity. So the government is doing a lot of projects for this UAE and Saudi governments. They're investing in these areas, and hence you see students going to study such programs as well. So now I'm just going to go quickly through three countries. That's Pakistan, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. So just starting off with Pakistan. So I'm sure most of you know the market, but I would like to just share a few insights. So with Pakistan, you can say primarily it's a PG market, but the UG market is definitely growing. And I think in some cities, for example, Karachi, they have a increasing number of international schools that are coming up, and they probably contribute a lot to this UG market. But if you have a chance, have a look at this ISC research, which does research on countries that have the most number of international schools. Pakistan is ranked top 5 in that list as well. So there is a lot of potential for Pakistan as a UG market, and it's definitely growing, obviously, in certain cities that we're looking at. Some of the popular programs, specific to the market: engineering, business, health science, law, computer science, IT. Obviously, a factor that's been raised not only by the team, what we generally hear from surveys run in the market is the post-study work opportunities, or what can students do after studying. So that's something they look forward to. So moving on, I just wanted to highlight some key updates about our IDP Pakistan team. So we started off in 2019, and just after we started, in a couple of months, COVID hit. A lot of plans that we had in place could not be pushed through. But one of the things we really worked on in the last 4 years has been the marketing, digital marketing, especially. There's been a lot of trial and error. And now we have reached a stage where we are looking at quality over anything else. So that's one thing. We are working on an institutional outreach program. Again, we had a strong plan at the time the office was set up, but we couldn't implement it until 2021, when the pandemic had sort of subsided, and that is being developed as well as we speak. It's something that we continue doing regularly. So if any of you are visiting the country, please feel free to reach out to the office. We can always work together in visiting those local institutions as well. Pakistan is an high-risk market, so we do understand that, and our offices ensure that they do a lot of high-level checks, especially with students, ensuring that they meet the university and visa requirements. Right now, from a regional perspective, we do consider Pakistan as a growing market, and we have an acceleration plan built into our objective for the office, and the product of that is that we are growing the number of offices in the country as well. So we are expanding. We have 3 offices right now. We are looking at expanding into 2 to 3 other offices. So we have Faisalabad, Vijayawada, etc. in plans as well. So now moving on to UAE. So with UAE, again, it's a slightly different. You have a strong UG market, and the way we know that is because of the number of international schools that are here, again, ranked very highly in the ISC research in that sense. But we do see in our events, there's a strong demand for PG as well. However, the PG market is sort of scattered because there can be people working, there can be those in those universities based here as well. As mentioned, it's composed of both sponsored Emiratis and your self-funded expats, but primarily 90% of the students going out of this country are expats and 10% are Emiratis. Majority of them come from Abu Dhabi area as well, because that's where most of the ministries are. Again, some of the programs that students look at is engineering, business, computer science, IT, science, arts and design is one area that is really promoted in this country as well. Because of the diversity of the students we have, apart from post-study work opportunities, there's ranking and affordability. Obviously, sponsor students, because of the ministries, they look at ranking, but expats tend to look at post-study work opportunities and affordability in addition to that. So now just quickly, some points on IDP UAE. For IDP, it's our biggest, at the moment, it's our biggest market. We do have very strong relations with schools here, and that's something we have built on over the years. And a subsidy of that is obviously the exclusive partnership that we have with the GEMS group of schools. And also additionally, there was a recent quota scholarship that was released by the government, the UAE government, which is to cater to the middle and lower class Emirati population. And we are the exclusive partner, not only for IELTS testing, but also for university admissions and, and for visa processing as well. So we are working with the ministry for those things. The students at this point are only being sent to colleges, community colleges. They would tend to do English language diploma and then maybe progress into bachelor's if the scholarship permits. So now, final country I want to focus on is Saudi Arabia. Just moving on to Saudi Arabia again. Well, it can be a bit balanced, but it's primarily you do have PG students, but UG as well is growing as well. And we work very closely with some of the schools, and we're trying to develop that sector. Saudi as a market does add diversity to the student population, so that's one thing, and that's an interest that many institutions have shared as well. In terms of programs, you look at computer science, IT, health sciences, business, and then obviously engineering and technology. Now, when it comes to expats, obviously you look at affordability scholarships and post-study work opportunities. When sponsor students, the way that works is have to have strong engagement with the different ministries there. not just locally in Saudi, but also with the cultural attaché in the US as well. Now, there's a typo error there. That's actually IDP Saudi Arabia. So you'll notice that Saudi Arabia is one of the largest source markets. It has seen a dip over the last few financial years, but generally as a market, it is massive, right? Now with IDP Saudi Arabia, we have 3 offices, and in the last Saudi Arabian Expo, we had over 2,000 attendees, and that's something that we have been consistently. And what we have noticed is usually the US institutions that attend, they have the queue or the interest to meet the US institutions is probably one of the highest, right? We have some good institutional outreach program, and the way we have done is we've got a business development manager whose his role is to build these relationships. And if you are visiting the market, do reach out to us, do let us know, and we can work. And in line with that, we are trying to, we work on continuing to maintain and also grow new stakeholder partnerships, especially with government and different ministries. So again, just to raise this for Saudi Arabia, that was a typo error there. So just wanted to do a bit of destination comparison. I'm not going to go through all of them. You will receive the slides so you can have a look at it. But just pretty much on the different scholarships is very important. Like Australia is probably the most competitive when it comes to scholarship because they do have the university one. They do a bit of combination. They work with us on some scholarships like providing airfare vouchers. And then their government, that's a separate one, but they do, government also offers some scholarships. That's true. UK, there has been some university, obviously they have university scholarships, but some of the institutions have been working with us to, give airfare vouchers or airfare scholarships to students. Canada and US stems mostly on the university scholarship perspective. Also with the government stakeholder, Australia and UK would be the most engaged, I would say. North America is a bit on the slower side, but something that we're really building and we're trying to get. And in certain countries like Oman, we have managed to make some headway as well there. Obviously, in the future, we will be looking at more US focused activities to really drive that engagement with the students as well. So I thought it was important to get some feedback of what our councils think of US as a destination compared to the others. So there were some, improvements that were requested. They were doing this overall comparison with some, with destinations like Australia, UK. Obviously, the application turnaround time was something that needed to be improved. That's something that council shared. Also with the website, they do find it a bit cumbersome, or it takes more time for them to look for the tuition fees or deadlines, program structure on the website or entry requirements, which tends to be much easier on for institutions such as Australia. And we have had cases where some of the Australian institutions have run surveys with the students. They've co-worked with some agents and students to understand how the websites could be improved. So that's something that, has a long term to look at. Market engagement has been low on the region, but this year, I've got to say, we have seen more engagement, at least with UAE, and that's something that that was a positive note the UAE team had shared. But obviously, Egypt, Pakistan, Oman, and Kuwait had mentioned that they would like to see more engagement. They would also like to see some refresher training. In terms of training, one of the things that we have seen is most of the institutions US institutions, you tend to run regional trainings. Now, while it's one way of trying to reach out to all the offices, what happens is it's set, but not all the counselors may be able to attend because they might be meeting a student or a parent, or they have some other appointment. My suggestion is let's focus on key priority markets, like I mentioned, like UAE, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Oman, Kuwait, and do individual trainings with them, at least for the first 3, and at least then what happens is we can block out those consulate calendar just for the training session. They can be there, they can attend, they can be more engaged and build those applications with at least some key markets, and then from there we can take it to the other markets. Because at the moment when you do training, it's being a bit diluted because some of them attend, some of them don't. So this was their feedback on popular programs. So you can see similar to what we do, the data analysis that we have done as well on our numbers as well. So moving on, and in the last couple of slides, I've already spoken about this based on the feedback, but it'll be great to consistently engage with some of our key markets. I've also highlighted some markets that require refresher training, and let's focus on 3 or 4 markets. Let's work on those markets and then go forward. And really request, if you're able to travel or if you're passing by this region, please do take some time to visit our offices. Also engage in some of our expo and conversion events, especially our expo, because we tend to do a lot of branding and marketing around there, and it does give you a lot of exposure, and that's where you tend to generate a lot more of those leads, which in turn go towards the applications as well. So I also wanted to highlight for us some of the countries that we are looking to grow, this hypergrowth that we are looking at, or expansion as well. It's Pakistan, UAE. We are looking to expand maybe in the future in terms of offices. Africa is, as a region, Africa is where we are going to do most of our expansion. Not much in Middle East, but just thought I'd with it. But again, that's a conversation for another day. And US at the moment, in our key markets, we really want to grow faster than the market growth, and we would want to work with you to do that as well. And that's it from me. I would hand it over to Victor. Thank you very much to everybody who's attending.
Thank you so much, Amith. Well, welcome everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining this webinar. At the University of Toledo, we have our graduate and undergraduate is actually in 2 different offices. So for myself, my office, we deal strictly with undergraduate students. We do help recruit graduate students here at the University of Toledo, but our office is responsible for undergrad. So that kind of a little disclaimer before we start up. Okay, so the Middle East for the University of Toledo is a really important market for us. I think a lot of that is because of our history. When I came to Toledo about 7 years ago, we had 957 Saudi students on campus. That's just undergraduate. We are 1 hour from Dearborn, Michigan, largest Muslim population in the United States. But we have a large diversity throughout the whole Middle East. So it is an important market. We do visit the market 3 to 4 times per year, outside of the COVID time. So it's a big market for us, but it's a market that we continually try to improve on. With IDP so far, what we're doing, we're really trying to focus on visiting the offices, really working with the IDP staff to get the parent-student meetings in each of these countries. So I'll just go over a couple of the different countries that we're in and how we work through it. So as Amith said, Oman is a very big country for us. With their scholarship program, we are part of that scholarship program. We get students in for respiratory care. My goal is everywhere we go, we have to set a goal for the number of applications, but the yield rate as well. Oman right now, our goal is 20 students a year from the country, all undergraduate, and we've achieved that each year that I've been here. So we do really well. We're trying to grow it because the whole country is growing. It is a unique place in the fact that in the Middle East, we really kind of go after expats. Oman is a little bit different. We get a lot of Omani students. They're very well educated. They have a very good middle class, both the public schools and the international schools. What's amazing with them is that they do have the government scholarship program, but it's not like the Saudis or the Kuwaitis. They have a limit on what they're going to pay. Usually it's about 20,000 USD. So if your institution is like the University of Toledo, where we really don't give scholarships to third-party scholarship programs, we have to do that at Toledo to be able to be part of that scholarship program. I think it pays off, but it's not for everybody. But in Oman, if you go to the public schools, those students have to put your university on the list of their top 5 choices if they're part of the scholarship program. If your university is not listed by that student, you will not be selected for that student to attend your school. So it's for us, it's a high priority to get into the public schools, to get those high school students to know who we are. So at least we become one of the 5 schools that they select. So it's very important that you get on the ground. Virtually impossible to work Oman and I think the whole Middle East without face-to-face interaction with the schools, with the students, and with the parents. Next slide. Qatar is another up-and-coming market. Not an IDP market right now, but I have a hunch it will be pretty quick. Outstanding English ability. Obviously, we just saw the World Cup, so we know all about the country. But what a lot of people don't realize is that to get all these engineers to go to Doha, the government has been funding education for high school for these parents for the past 20 years, 25 years maybe. So the parents haven't paid anything to send their students to top-notch international high schools. Therefore, the parents have a lot of money to send their students abroad. They still really want them to go to the United States. They see it as a great place to go. But it's a different market in that the parents have the money, so they feel like they really hold the keys to the car. They're going to push you hard for the scholarships. They really want to know where their child's going to go, and they want to see professional outcomes. So when their child graduates, how much money they're going to make, where are they going to live. None of the students that we talk to in Doha are actually from, I'm going to say, anywhere. And I know that might sound a little bit confusing, but these are all expats. These are expats who have lived there for 20 to 25 years. So if it's an Indian family, their children have never lived in India. So yes, they identify as Indian, but they've never lived there. Now they visit grandparents, but that's about the extent of it. And that's the same with Canadians, with Germans, with the British, everybody that we meet with there, the children kind of feel like they're in kind of limbo. So it's kind of massaging the whole relationship quite a bit. Most of the parents, when they retire, they will go back home, but their students, their children have no interest in going to live in India or wherever else they're from, because they don't know that country. So a high standard of living, great educational system, really solid parent interaction with you as a recruiter or as the admission person. The next slide. The UAE, all of us who have been to the UAE will agree. Amith has it made. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world to visit, but it's also one of the most unique places that we recruit. We get about 20 students a year from the UAE. No students from the UAE. They're all expats. Majority of ours are Indian students. But what I've seen in the last 10 years that I've been going back and forth to the UAE is a transition right now in the city. It's a transition from heavy construction, building the tallest building in the world, building these massive shopping malls, to one now of hospitality. So a lot of the parents of the students we recruit, they're engineers, but they're really starting to fear for their job a little bit. The construction projects have slowed dramatically. Everything's going over now to tourism. They want people to come see what they built. So a lot of these families, although they have money in the bank, they feel a lot of financial pressure. They don't believe they're going to have a job much longer. Some have already lost their engineering jobs. So again, their children have never lived anywhere but Dubai or Abu Dhabi. So it's a time of kind of uncertainty for a lot of the people that we recruit from the UAE. I'm going to easily say 95% of the students we get from the UAE, their parents are engineers. One or both of them are engineers. We all know it's a huge country for expats. I believe only 12% of the country is from the UAE. So again, it puts a lot of diversity on my staff when they tour around the city of Dubai. We do visit the German high schools, the Canadian high schools, but of course we have to be aware that a lot of these students could go back to their countries and go to school for free. So probably the Indian population is our #1 population when we go to the UAE, and that's both Abu Dhabi and in Dubai. But if you really enjoy recruiting a lot of students from a lot of different places in the world, there's very few locations in the world that can match Dubai or the UAE. A lot of nationalities, everybody's right there. But it is a country that is in transition for what we generally recruit, and that is students of engineers. So it's been kind of different. So really, those are the areas that we hit. We do go to Saudi Arabia, we do go to Jordan, we do go to Kuwait. We're part of their scholarship program as well. Obviously, all of us are going through the exact same thing with the Saudi market. So my trips now to Saudi Arabia really are all about Indian students. It sounds funny, but that's what we're going there for. And I can say that in most of these countries, we are trying to get the local population, but expats are still a very big part of our business wherever we go in the Middle East. But it is a place that we will continue to visit, continue to invest heavily into. And hopefully with IDP's help, we just keep growing the market. And you know, we're very happy with everything we do there. I hope that kind of helps. I'll be glad to answer any questions about the UAE and what our position is in the country. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vic. And yes, definitely with our help, we will continue to grow international student enrollment for you. So looking forward to our continued collaboration. See, we have a couple questions rolling in, so we will begin our Q&A segment. Please feel free to add more questions here to the Q&A tool or the chat box. We will be monitoring both. So we have a question around IDP's presence in Lebanon. And Amith, if you can share a bit about how we're advising students there, and information on how they're applying and enrolling in light of the economic crisis and people having a hard time sending money outside of the country.
Yes, thank you, Ellie. Yes, I did see that question come through. Yeah, with Lebanon, it is a smaller market now, and we are seeing some students going through, but we don't see the numbers that maybe we have seen before, especially in light of that. Yes, correct. The students do have some difficulties in sending out money, but they do have relatives who are assisting them, and to send out that money. And they do have certain exchanges that they use to, really send out the money. I guess the issue comes if the student does not get a visa and then there's a refund. Then we have had certain restrictions on that point. But I'm not saying the volume is very big that we see as compared to some of the other markets. But yeah, few students. Yeah. Jordan is a market that's growing. I've seen the second question, so I'm just jumping in, Ellie.
Sure.
So Jordan is a market that's growing, and if you look at the overall visa grants, I've seen that it's grown at least by 10-15%. I'll have to get the actual data to give the insights, but yeah, it's a market that's really growing. In that Lebanon at the moment, it's very slow. I've got to say.
And if I could just add a little bit to that, Amith. So Lebanon, the city of Toledo was built on immigrants. So we do have a fairly large Lebanese population here. This fall was the first time since I've been at Toledo in 7 years, we really started getting undergraduate applications again. And we had 3 students come this fall directly from Lebanon, not going through another country. So I do think it's an up and coming market. Will it ever get back to where it was 15 years ago? That's going to take some time, but I think it's worth, we are putting a little bit of a presence back into the country.
Yeah, the country is slowly rebuilding themselves. So I agree with you that it may take time and it may not get to the same numbers. So you have to be a bit patient. But yeah, it's a smaller market at this point.
Mm-hmm. Good insights, and hopefully it will continue to rebuild and we'll see some increasing numbers from there as well. So, okay, question for you, Vic. Can you speak a bit about your team and how the University of Toledo balances in-country recruitment with armchair recruitment?
Yeah, I'm really lucky to be at the University of Toledo. I love the university. Anybody who knows me probably knows it, they know I drive 163 miles each way to work and from work. So I live in mid-Michigan, but that's how I feel about the University of Toledo. I have a really good operating budget, so I don't do a whole lot of armchair recruiting. Of course, we all send out our email blasts and things like that, but we're in the country, so we travel to all of our partners minimum twice a year, hopefully fall and spring. But we try to support all of our partners. If it's IDP, we want to come visit the offices. Amith knows I've been in the Abu Dhabi office. We try to really get there. So we're all about face-to-face. We want to meet parents. We want to meet students. We want to go to the high schools. But when we go to the high schools, I'm really trying to draw those students to meet me in the hotel lobby or at Starbucks or wherever. So I don't do a lot of armchair recruiting. It's really face-to-face. It takes a lot of time. I've got 3 staff members that travel heavily. But I think our success is there. We're pretty consistently 20% increase every year. We have about 2,000 international students here at Toledo. We've got a pretty lofty goal by our new president to have an intake of 700 undergrads per year. We're about 400 right now. So it's just a face-to-face. I really can't stress it. It's got to be face-to-face. It's total relationship building. And that's true working with IDP. If you sit back and try to be an armchair recruiter with IDP, like anybody else, it's going to be pretty slow. If you visit them and the staff gets to know you, first of all, they're really good people, but you'll start getting applications. But it's not magic. I think you got to work it.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. I agree, Vic. And I think it's important to note, like, armchair recruiting is critically important in that top of the funnel stage when students are starting their research and they're looking at your digital marketing, but it really is the face-to-face connections that help to build trust. We do that at IDP through our counselors and then through partners like you, Vic, who come around and visit our offices and build those relationships. There's really nothing that compares to that face-to-face connection. All right, so another question coming in. I see someone said, I will be in Dubai, Egypt, and Turkey in March, and they would love to visit us. Just so you know, that was submitted as an anonymous question, so we don't know exactly who you are, but we are very happy to support. I see Amith has already responded to that. So yes, very happy to welcome you to our offices. Another question is, we get a ton of applications from Nigeria, but a lot of time and effort is put in for very little conversion. Do you have recommendations for how much focus I should put on this market?
So with Nigeria, they tend to be a bit tech heavy. So, they tend to search, they look at where they can go and study. And being a huge market, it's a huge market for a number of destinations, right? I think for UK, it's somewhere close to 20, 30,000 students that have gone. For Canada, it's around 10,000. US, it's around 6,000, 7,000. So it's massive market, right? So you're always going to get students who will be browsing, they'll check, and then they might submit an application as such. So they might put in an inquiry that's happening. What we can do is, obviously, the way, and even if you do targeted marketing as such, you'll always have students checking. We do see that as well. So there's a lot of filtering that needs to be done. So happy to, get on a separate call. We can discuss how IDP can help in that sense. But yeah, I think that would be the best way forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Amith. And another question that came in, which I see you've answered here in the Q&A tool, but would be great if you could just speak a bit about it as well. How can IDP help and support with market engagement and counselor trainings in key markets, especially for institutions that cannot physically travel in the region?
Sorry, Ellie, I missed that question. Can you?
Sure. Yep. No problem. So it's a question asking, how can IDP help and support with market engagement and counselor trainings in key markets, especially for institutions that cannot physically travel in the region?
Yeah, I think I answered that, but just to reiterate, happy to, support with that. So what we can do is, when I meant counselor training or engaging with our counselor, it doesn't, I know it can be difficult times to travel and physically do that, but we are happy to at least run it virtually. What I would like is maybe just focus on certain key markets. So feel free to reach out to me. and I can connect to the office and we can set up those trainings specifically with the counselors as well.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Thank you, Amith. And then another question for Vic here, which is, what selling points do you think are best to use in the Middle East for attracting these students? What selling points about University of Toledo seem to work well there?
Co-op, 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 and co-op. So our engineering program has a mandatory 3-semester paid co-op requirement. So that is our really big selling point. Almost every student that we talk to, every family that we talk to is really wrapped around our co-op experiential learning that we have at the University of Toledo. I think it's by far and away the most important thing that we can offer. I think all of us have an MBA program. All of us have management, but we have some certain programs that we really try to focus on whichever country we're in. If we're in South Korea, we have a cosmetic science program in the School of Pharmacy. So we push that. But in the Middle East, it's all about co-op. They really love to see internships in co-op. And if it's paid, again, like I said, a lot of these engineering families feeling a little bit of pressure right now that their job will end sooner than later. So having an opportunity for their student to earn money and get that experience is really a big selling point for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's invaluable, clearly, for that region.
Just to add on that, that's a great point that you raised, Victor, because from this region, across all destinations, that's what we see. It's either co-op, internship, work integrated learning program. This is what parents and students tend to ask, because they want, they want to bring that theoretical study into practical as well, and just get some experience as well out of it. So yeah, that was it.
And we've had to be careful with that too, Amith, because like with Kuwait, we are part of the scholarship program, but they will not accept our engineering students for the scholarship because they do not want the students to, they would like them to have a co-op, but because it's paid, they won't approve it. So, so we really have to work with each of the government programs. But for the families, it's all about co-op and internships.
So interesting and so nuanced as well. So appreciate you sharing your experiences, Vic. Another question for you, Vic, here, which is, how much of your time is spent traveling abroad, and how big is your international recruitment team? So give us a little insight into why you love University of Toledo so much.
Ask my wife, maybe I travel, maybe not enough, but no, I travel roughly 200 to 300,000 miles a year. I've got 2 other assistant directors that travel probably 100,000 each a year. So we're on the road quite a bit, fall and spring. My whole team is only 6, and we do our in-house credential evaluation. We do our own I-20s. We do our own recruitment. We do have a marketing team, of course, at the University of Toledo, but we do a lot of our stuff ourselves. So it's a lot of travel. It's really busy. But it's something that I think is why we are as successful as we are, because we're willing to do it and to get out there and go face to face. I'm fortunate. Okay, I do have a good budget to be able to do that. And with the prices post-COVID, it's getting tougher. But I've got a relatively small team, and we just all work really well. And I think it starts though with just good partners. So with IDP, with some of our other individual partners, we try to support everybody. But with IDP, it makes it simple because we have an office to go to.
Excellent. Yes, many offices around the world to visit, so we can support you. And I see we have some folks in the chat who are incredulous that you drive 163 miles to work. So amazing fun facts that we all learned about Vic today.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think with that, we will close. I don't see any more questions coming in, but I do want to thank our fantastic speakers for being here with us today and sharing their expert insights. And I also want to thank our attendees for joining us and asking such interesting questions. The slides and a recording of this session will be shared with you in a follow-up email. There's also a brief survey at the end of this webinar that will pop up, and we would love if you could take a moment to fill that out for us. We really value your feedback, and it helps us to shape our future webinars and engagement activities. So thanks all. Have a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.